It always seems impossible until it's done. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. I dream of an Africa which is in peace with itself. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is inspiring others to move beyond it. It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Lead from the back and let others believe they are in front. There is no such thing as part freedom. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. I was not a messiah, but an ordinary man who had become a leader because of extraordinary circumstances. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then he becomes your partner. There is no easy walk to freedom anywhere, and many of us will have to pass through the valley of the shadow of death again and again before we reach the mountaintop of our desires. I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. Do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. I hate race discrimination most intensely and in all its manifestations. I have fought it all during my life, I fight it now, and will do so until the end of my days. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. We can change the world and make it a better place. It is in your hands to make a difference. I cherish my own freedom dearly, but I care even more for your freedom. I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. A good leader can engage in a debate frankly and thoroughly, knowing that at the end he and the other side must be closer, and thus emerge stronger. You don't have that idea when you are arrogant, superficial, and uninformed. Resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It is better to lead from behind and to put others in front, especially when you celebrate victory when nice things occur. You take the front line when there is danger. Then people will appreciate your leadership. There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. Freedom cannot be achieved unless the women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression. It is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. A fundamental concern for others in our individual and community lives would go a long way in making the world the better place we so passionately dreamt of. Respect for human rights and human dignity is the mark of a civilized society. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. Real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for the freedom of their people. In my country, we go to prison first and then become president. It is not our diversity which divides us. It is not our ethnicity or religion or culture that divides us. Since we have achieved our freedom, there can only be one division amongst us, between those who cherish democracy and those who do not. Sometimes, it falls upon a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom. Our human compassion binds us one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future. I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom come responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not yet ended. There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. I detest racialism because I regard it as a barbaric thing, whether it comes from a black man or a white man. I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. We must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always right to do right. I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being an optimist is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. We must strive to be amongst the best in the world and must never be satisfied with anything less. Money won't create success, the freedom to make it will. The time for healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divide us has come. I was not a messiah, but an ordinary man who had become a leader because of extraordinary circumstances. After climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. I had no epiphany, no singular revelation, no moment of truth, but a steady accumulation of 1,000 slights, 1,000 indignities, 1,000 unremembered moments produced in me an anger, a rebelliousness, a desire to fight the system that imprisoned my people. Once a person is determined to help themselves, there is nothing that can stop them. The policy of being too cautious is the greatest risk of all. When people are determined, they can overcome anything. The struggle is my life. I will continue fighting for freedom until the end of my days. Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all. I am not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying. To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. It is music and dancing that makes me at peace with the world. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. It is not the kings and generals that make history, but the masses of the people. We must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always right to do right. It is never my custom to use words lightly. If 27 years in prison have done anything to us, it was to use the silence of solitude to make us understand how precious words are and how real speech is in its impact on the way people live and die. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. A leader is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon the others follow, not realizing that all along they are being directed from behind. I cannot and will not give any undertaking at a time when I and you, the people, are not free. Your freedom and mind cannot be separated. We must negotiate for peace. We negotiate for freedom. We negotiate for the future. It is so easy to break down and destroy. The heroes are those who make peace and build. It was during those long and lonely years that my hunger for the freedom of my own people became a hunger for the freedom of all people, white and black. I knew as well as I knew anything that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life. It is not our diversity that divides us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. Courageous people do not fear forgiving for the sake of peace. We understand it still that there is no easy road to freedom. We know it well that none of us acting alone can achieve success. Difficulties break some men but make others. No axe is sharp enough to cut the soul of a sinner who keeps on trying, one armed with the hope that he will rise even in the end. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then he becomes your partner. The time for healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divide us has come. Nonviolence is a good policy when the conditions permit. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. I dream of an Africa which is in peace with itself. Real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for the freedom of their people.